All right. Welcome, everybody that is here live and watching the recording. We're really excited to talk about graphic novels today. I know many people are signing in because they might be fans themselves of graphic novels, and so you are here to kind of feel amplified and affirmed in your love for this format. But if you are also kind of on the, well, my students love it, but I'm not there yet, or I love it and my students love it, but I keep hearing, and I'm sure all of you have heard the magic words. Please make sure they check out a real book. We're going to talk about that today. And just really, the thing I'm most excited about is Rebeka has such passion and knowledge around this. It's not just graphic novels for the sake of graphic novels, but she's here to talk about how to make this kind of tie in with a lot of the things that we want our students to build skill-wise and in terms of reading and traditional literacy, which sometimes gets left out of the conversation when we talk about graphic novels and comics. So I'm going to stop singing her praises and let her actually talk so you all can be convinced yourself. But Rebeka, thank you for joining us today from Chapel Hill Carborough City Schools and sharing your love and knowledge of all this.
Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate your time today, and those of you that are taking the time to watch this later, time is time, and all of that is valuable. And those of you that are here live today in the middle of the school day, I know things are always nuts and bonkers. I taught 5 classes this morning and just had to be like okay, bye, and get right out of the library and get in here. So I really appreciate you all taking the time to come and hopefully fellowship and learn and get some good things to take with you today. I will sing Molly's praises a bit for a second too, because a lot of the reason that I continue to have a platform to share what I've learned really started with her. I started off as a classroom teacher in 2011 and taught 2nd and 3rd grade for about 10 years and had the privilege of going to NCAT at Ocracoke one year where Molly was presenting, and I had already kind of had in the back of my mind that the itch to get into the library was there. And then she just shared all of the amazing things that she was doing with her kids in Dare County. And I was like, I want to be that. I want to be her. And she helped me get into my library science program and helped write some letters of recommendation. It has just been such a great colleague and dear friend for all of those years since. So please take advantage of the people in this profession and lean on each other and use each other for expertise, because like, man, it just makes all the difference. And I'm really happy to be here with you today. And even though we're not in person, feel free to reach out and try to gain me as another person in your corner, because times are tough, and it's tough for librarians. It's tough for any educator right now, and we need to be in each other's corner. So with that being said, I have been a teacher in Chapel Hill Carborough City Schools for about the past 15 years. I have this really magical privilege of being able to have been a teacher at the school that I'm currently at first, and then the position came available, and I jumped into that library science program and was able to kind of finish and start that job off both. But it was just such a wonderful experience to already have knowledge of so many of the kids in my building and already know the teachers that were here. And I also started the year of virtual learning during COVID. So that was a wild time to get into a new profession as well. But it was kind of great because I came in a lot when there was nobody in the building and kind of was able to learn the collection and get into the stats. So I love this job. I hope I get to do it forever. I hope North Carolina protects it as a role forever. I hope my district protects it as a full-time position in our buildings forever. I know that that's not the case for everybody. Please know that I validate and understand that that is not all of our experiences, but hopefully we are finding the joy in the roles that we currently have. So here is what I have planned for you today. And while I'm going over that, if you also, I just kind of like to know my audience, and I'm not picky about people like turning their camera on or anything like that. Like, Sometimes I just need to not have somebody looking at me while I'm trying to eat lunch and listen to things. But I would love to kind of know like who you are, what your role is, where you're coming from. If you just want to kind of dump that in the chat, I'd love to kind of keep an eye on that and see what I'm working with here. I will preface this by saying that my only experience that I really wanted and have ever been in is elementary. So for those of you in middle and high, I hope to make this be something that can stretch across all age groups, but you will definitely see that my heart and passion is with the littles and pre-K through fifth. So hopefully there's some good takeaways for you there. Okay. What we're going to work through is I'm going to first kind of go through some graphic novel statistics of what I have going on in my personal school library, some barriers that I've heard from teachers and myself included for many, many years versus some things that can hopefully reframe that as a barrier breaker, how to use graphic novels and high-level thinking. I'm going to break out that Bloom's taxonomy triangle that we've all seen 100 million times because we keep going around to that in education, and it's nice to kind of have a model to stick to there if that's something that your district is asking you to make sure that you're including in your lesson plans. Matching graphic novels with our North Carolina state standards. I'm also going to give you a preview of some of the new ELA standards that are going to be starting not next year, but the year after, because our district is wanting us to go ahead and kind of get ahead of that and have a wrap on what's coming down the pipe. So trying to give you some things to match up with that. How to incorporate graphic novels into your writer's workshop if you're a classroom teacher or even just a school librarian that does lots of writing assignments with your kids. And also how to advocate for the use of graphic novels, whether it's advocating for using them in your budget, if someone's coming and looking at what you're curating and wanting to know why there's so much graphic novels that are on your list, advocating for the use of using them within your curriculum, or just advocating for letting your students read them for pleasure, because all of those things are things that, you know, we can have pushback on. So here we go. I'm going to take a second to scroll through here. Got some K-8 tech specialist. Pitt County is where I did my student teaching, HB Sugg Elementary, all those years ago. Glad to see we've still got the folks from Pitt in here. Stay-at-home mom, amazing. Hi, Sarah. Media coordinators, great. Awesome. Good to know my audience. Okay, so the school that I currently teach at is Scroggs Elementary. Like I said, Chapel Hill Carver City Schools. I've been here for about 15 years. The current statistics, we are one of those districts that is currently facing really, really low enrollment. So if you're looking at those numbers and going 380 students in an elementary school, that's not very much. We know that too. And we are fortunately kind of in a place where we're probably going to have to close some buildings in the next couple of years in order to redistrict and try to get some of those numbers up. When I first started teaching in Chapel Hill, we had right at 500 to 550 students. We're just kind of in an area where, you know, enrollment's taken over and dropping in certain places, but we're also in a very, very expensive place to live. Chapel Hill is one of the hardest places to work and live in. Most of our staff members do not live in district, so drop in enrollment is definitely due to cost of living here as well. In my current collection, I have about 16,464 books, give or take, between weeding and adding new things here and there. 777 of those books are graphic novels, which is about 5% of my total collection, which doesn't seem like very much. I'm trying to continue to add to that as we go. But the thing that really sticks out to me the most, if you're looking down at those demographics at the bottom, every single year, the percentage of checkouts for my circulation for the entire year just continues to rise and rise and rise. So far this year, 25% of my checkouts are graphic novels. So it's always really helpful for me to have that data. I'm really lucky that we are not in a place where like our school board is not overseeing what I'm ordering, and I don't have to get any like permission to order what I'm ordering right now. That could change any day. But it's helpful to have that data. If I had someone coming to me and being like, "Why are you ordering so many graphic novels?" It's the demand. It's part of what my students are interested in. It's a big piece of what gets them in the library and gets them interested, and I want to be able to back that up with numbers. Okay, so the things on the left side of the screen are things that I have often heard, whether it be from teachers or other librarians or just anyone, parents as well, that just kind of, I talked to a staff member this morning about this training, and they said, "Ugh, I just hate graphic novels." And I was like, "Well, you can come to my training today and I'll try to change your mind." I don't know that they're going to be here, but it's something that we constantly hear. So one of the things that I hear a lot is that graphic novels are really difficult to read aloud versus like a standard continuous text chapter novel. And so anytime I hear that, my recommendation is to try and digitally project a graphic novel in large format so that your students can see everything that encompasses the illustrations and the text on the page, because it is one of those things where your kids really do need to be seeing what's happening on each page. So with our smart boards that we have access to in school, really any time that I do a read aloud, whether it's a chapter book, a picture book, a nonfiction, or a graphic novel, I always try to have a physical copy of the book in my hand so that they can see that I'm like still tangibly accessing the book. But then I really like to have it projected large on my screen as well. I feel like it just really helps with engagement and comprehension, understanding as well. I also have a lot of teachers that will use their document cameras to project things large as well. We have a 4th grade teacher who does a whole unit on graphic novels, and he uses New Kid as his mentor text. And that is his read aloud to start that off every single year. He projects it log on his board and goes panel by panel as a read aloud. Another thing I hear constantly is that there's not as many words on the page, and students are not getting as much detail in the narrator's description, or they're not able to do as much reading between the lines with inferencing and using context clues. And so my counter narrative to that is often to let the illustrator take the place of that nuance, because there is so much context in what the illustrator of a graphic novel chooses to put in the pages of their book. Not every single graphic novel is meant to be the most in-depth, complex thing. I mean, we love Narwhal and Jelly. It's not necessarily something that I would use as an incredibly complex text, but there are lots of other choices out there like that. So let the illustration take the place of that work. Use that for inferencing, use that for context clues, analyze the way that the characters' facial expressions are interacting with each other, or even just noticing what the illustrator has chosen to include in the background. There's a lot of higher order thinking skills that can be included in that. And then I also hear a lot about how not having access to a chapter book really decreases the amount of skill work that kids have in like tracking a continuous text novel with multiple lines of text, all the way down the page, and how that really decreases their stamina, which is absolutely a valid point. And that's one of the reasons why I'm a librarian that's both and. I don't want you completely reading graphic novels, but I also don't want you to eliminate it from your balanced reading life because you feel the pressure to not be able to read them. So my compromise with that, I really like to kind of move kids towards a model of something that has a balance of maybe graphic novel and continuous text. Wimpy Kid's a really good option for that. For your emergent readers, I really like the Owl Diaries, Diary of a Pug, Last Kids on Earth series. You get a good combo in there, and you're not completely having to throw out the graphic novel format, but still getting that practice of continuous text tracking. Okay, next part, we're going to start talking about using higher order thinking skills within graphic novels. The way that I like to do this is to kind of show you screenshots of books that I've chosen that I think are good for this skill work. And in my district right now, the big push is to really try to focus on levels like 3 through 6. Obviously, you're going to come in at 1 and 2 with a Bloom's level when you're first starting something out, but really the push is to try to make sure that kids are getting that opportunity to think all the way through the levels of higher order thinking. So everything I'm about to show you is either a level 3, 4, 5, or 6. All right. So this page right here is from a Detective Beans graphic novel series. This would be great for like K1, 2 age group. And what I've done is I've taken screenshots of this one page and put the panels out of order. So this would be a great thing to work on with students who are needing to work on sequencing and story order, because the way that this page is currently set up now, it doesn't really make sense for the cat to come in and have a snack right away, and then at the very bottom go, hey, give me a snack. Hey, Mom, how was school? Sequence-wise, that just doesn't make sense. So what I would be asking for kids to look at here is like, realistically, what would be happening first in the story order? What would be happening next? And then you're also teaching them how to track panels from left to right, top to bottom. So it's giving them instruction on how to effectively read a graphic novel, which is sometimes something that kids really don't even know how to do if they just kind of jump in and love the color of the pictures and love the excitement, but don't have the skill set of knowing how to effectively read through the context of that book. So taking panels and putting them out of order and rearranging things and talking about sequencing, that's a level 4. Oh, and something I should have said earlier, I'm sorry, I get into these things and I just like chat because I get really nervous and it just goes speed. If you have a question about anything, feel free to drop that in the chat, and I'm trying to keep my eye on that, but Molly is moderating for me as well too. So if something in the moment comes up, I'm totally happy to stop and address that in chat, because I want this to be informal and beneficial for you that way as well. Okay. This next page is from a very popular favorite in my library right now. It's called Parachute Kids. It is the first book in a series. The second book is called Outsider Kids, also very popular. Have lots of kids on the wait list for this, mostly throughout the year. The page that you're seeing is a scene where this family is coming over to the United States from Taiwan, and they're getting hung up in the airport and having trouble with their immigration status, letting them into the country. The youngest girl in the family is really excited about going to Disneyland. She's not sure that they're going to be able to do that. And so the illustrator has done such a phenomenal job on this page of really conveying the emotion of that character through the use of color. Like, what does the color orange show you? Is that like an anxious, upset color? The tears that are kind of coming off from the character's face, the use of, like, I know it's not called a blob, but just the way that the blob around that character kind of shows like chaos and discomfort and not knowing what's going to come next. The sharp angles of that first image where she's like shocked and not sure. Then it switches over to that, moodier blue. She's really anxious. She's not sure what's going to happen next, if they're going to be able to go. There's a lot of inferences that can be made from illustrations there, and there's text to support that in the page as well. So that would be a great inferencing conversation.
You're going to love this, Rebecca. You know what you just made me think of? It makes me think of Inside Out, because orange is anxiety and sadness is blue. So they could make a little...
My spirit animal.
I know. So it's like, I just have to say it out loud because I know how much you'll appreciate it.
My baby. Okay. I know. A little joy and a little anxiety. We get a little mixture together, and that's how Rebeka presents to the world.
All right, onward, refugee, which I also love.
Onward. This is a new publication that just dropped in the fall. Molly and I are both just anything Alan Gratz does. We want our hands on it. We want it in classrooms. We want it to be used. What I really love about this adaptation is, so the text that you see on the left side of the page is a replication of that same scene in the graphic novel. And this could just be such a powerful discussion about how you might get more text detail and the description of something on the left side. And then there's other pieces of it on the right side with the graphic novel adaptation that you may not even think about, like how the mother is reaching out for the young daughter, the tears streaming down her face, the fear that's just shown on the characters' faces when they're thinking that they're going to be taken off. It's just even if you're not planning on reading the entirety of both books with your classrooms, snippets can be powerful too. Like even if you read Refugee as a read aloud of the standard novel and then give them bits and pieces of the graphic novel to analyze, it doesn't have to be something where you read both of them in entirety, but being able to show students just the adaptation from one to the other really could give them so much more information, and then give that opportunity for kids to have a good compare and contrast discussion, to talk about how even just what the illustrator might have been thinking when it was time for him to, or for them to read Refugee and to adapt that into their illustrations, and what their thought process might have been and how they carefully choose each image. Because if we know anything about the publication of graphic novels, they take a long time, and really it's because that illustrator is so carefully taking apart the core content of the story and trying to make it come to life in a different way. So I'm really thrilled to see the amount of adaptations that we're getting with these really in-depth, complex books right now. Something that I have to credit one of our fourth grade teachers. In our fourth grade, our kids are departmentalized. We have 3 classes in fourth grade, and so we have one literacy teacher, one math, and one science and social studies, and the kids rotate. So our fourth grade literacy teacher teaches all of the fourth grade kids, and he does a lot of like Paideia seminars and Socratic seminars where he gets kids to sit in a circle and just have really in-depth discussions around scenes from books or analyzing lines of text. And he's been using New Kid for such a long time. It's really not even one of those books that goes out of style. And to give you some background knowledge on New Kid, if you haven't read it, it's about this boy named Jordan who starts at a predominantly white school and is really going through a tough time of his personal identity, of who he is as a student, of the stereotypes that other kids at that school and preconceived notions that they have of him going into it. And the district that I work in is also a very similar reflection of that. So it is very powerful for predominantly white classrooms to have a discussion around what it is like to empathize with a student like this, and how we do kind of pull out these stereotypes onto kids of color when there's only 2 or 3 of them in a classroom, which can sometimes be the case for our kids. The scene that you're looking at in the slide right here is Jordan's coming in on the first day of school, and there's some other white kids that are giving him the lay of the land, and they describe this other student at school as an Oreo, which coming up in school in like the 90s and early 2000s, that was something that I heard dropped in my peer groups just all the time. If you have someone that's a person of color that acts a certain way, that doesn't fit in with a perceived stereotype of how they're supposed to behave, it often gets passed off as like, well, why are you acting white? And thinking about like the weaponization of like white superiority and how kids are supposed to behave in that way based on what the makeup of the school might be. So we really try to dig into that with our kids and build up the empathy and what that experience might be like, because we do have a really significant achievement gap like that in our district, and that's something that we're really trying to break down the barriers of. So New Kid is a fantastic novel for that. This next book is also, oh man, I ate that one up in like a day when I got it over the summer a couple of years ago. Johnny Christmas is, his style feels very similar to Jerry Craft to me, but he is another graphic novel writer and illustrator. And this book, Swim Team, is about a little girl who relocates down to Florida with her dad. And she moves into this neighborhood where it's very common for children to be a part of the swim team. And there's this beautiful culture of predominantly Black swim teams that are in this area. And she kind of faces this fear of fitting in, but also like not knowing how to swim, and the history behind the African American community not having access to public pools. There's a lot of that history that gets thrown in. There are relationships between elderly, like ancestors and other people in the neighborhood that have been on that swim team for a long time that really help build up the youth to empower them to participate in a sport that, you know, historically it was not something that they had a lot of access to. The scene that you're looking at right now is I forgot the name of that main character. I'm sorry, it's been a little while since I've read that one, but they're getting ready to start in the last round of state championships. And this is one of those really cool, intense scenes where you're getting to the climax of the story. You're kind of seeing how everything's going to fall. She's struggled to like decide if she's going to be on the swim team. She's quit 1 or 2 times and has decided to come back. And this would be a really cool thing for kids to kind of flip the script and novelize it with continuous text. The graphic novel format is there, but what a cool writing opportunity that would be for kids to really use the emotion in that scene and put it into their own writing and kind of adapt backwards into a continuous script. So that's something really cool that we can be doing with our kids, is allowing them to become the continuous text author with a graphic novel scene. All right. Before I move on, just to give everybody a chance, because the last time I did this PD, I felt like I talked for an hour straight and give anybody a chance to ask questions or anything. I'm trying to be better about that. Before we move on to the next segment, are there any questions or comments or suggestions about the use of like blooms and higher order thinking in relation to graphic novels? Feel free to mute, unmute, or type it in the chat. Give everybody a second. Okay, I'm going to move on. But if you have something that comes up, drop in the chat or just come off mute and I'll be happy to stop and address. So the next few things I'm going to take a look at with you are ways to make sure that we are including standards in the work that we are doing. I know that we are currently in a culture of having our standards posted on boards, and if you're this is just kind of my experience, if there's going to be student work that goes out in the hallway, then there needs to be a standard that's posted with it in case like somebody from the district office comes by, or if a parent has a question or anything like that. I always try to make sure that teachers have a way to tie back to their standards, because that is something that their feet are held to the fire on that a lot. So let's take a look at some books that fit really well with our current curriculum. My 3rd grade team does a huge unit on the solar system and planets and suns and all of the things that are included in 3rd grade science standards. The science comics series is such a beloved one in my school. I haven't had a chance to curate everything from that series yet, but anytime there's something that fits really well with my curriculum, I try to really grab that up. You know, budget restraints don't allow me to buy everything. Otherwise, I'd go nuts, but I have to reel it in sometimes. The two standards that you're seeing right here are third grade science standards. And then the scene that I pulled that you see on the screen right here is talking about these characters that are just about to go on solar system exploration. So this would be a really cool book to work through with your kids when you're talking about like the order of planets from the sun and how they're going, you know, in order from like closest to farthest away, the characteristics of each different planet. And it also just kind of jazzes it up from reading a standard nonfiction book, which is perfectly acceptable and great as well and should not be forgotten about. But the characters in this book are having like really cool conversations about what they're seeing on their journey, and it kind of feels a little bit like you're going on an adventure with them too, which I love. So when I chose this scene a few months ago, this was right before I had a chance to look at our new standards. And if you haven't had a chance to look at our new literacy standards yet, one thing that is going to be a huge shift is we're going to be going away from standards specifically pointing out fiction versus nonfiction, which I have mixed feelings about. There's some good and some bad with that. But one of the things that has been directly stated in especially our second, third, and fourth grade standards are a focus on traditional tales. Second grade, it's more fables and folk tales. Third grade, it's more like fairy tales and folktale adaptations. And then fourth grade, you get into like myths and legends. So I do a lot of pulling collections for those grade levels when they get into a standard like that. This is a graphic novel that is kind of like a twisted tale on the grasshopper and the ant. So it would be a cool way to compare how the mood in that fable is really like one character having like an extreme reaction to something versus another having not so intense of a reaction. It also kind of reminds me a little bit of Chicken Little. Do you have any suggestions for middle school when the standards become more intensive and conferencing and sequencing are not rigorous enough? I've kind of shown you some graphic novel scenes so far that are really more appropriate. New Kid, I think, is totally appropriate for middle school conversations. You could chat that on up through 8th grade. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to show you 2 pages of standard novel to graphic novel adaptations, and a lot of those books are like 4th through 8th grade in-depth range. So hopefully this one that I'm showing you right now is probably more appropriate for 2nd and 3rd grade, but I do think that I have some more suggestions for you that will help with that older audience. So just stay tuned. We'll get there.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. These are the new standards that are coming in the 2027-28 school year. So it's not going to be RL or RI anymore. What I wanted to do, I'm going to show you the back and forth, is so L.2.4 directly translates into 2.CD.4.1. And then at the very bottom of this page, 2.7 and 2.9, they are combined into CD.3.3. And if y'all would like for me to link this into the end of the presentation, what's been really helpful for me is our district has been looking at a crosswalk document and looking at a direct correlation between the standards that we have now and how they're going to translate into the new standards so that like we're not dropping anything. I use that crosswalk to look at a lot of things like this to make sure that these older standards are going to get translated into the newer ones. Yeah, crossover would be great. Wrinkle in Time would be great. I've got all of those that are going to come up in my suggestions. Okay, this is a kindergarten standard, and we don't really think a lot about using graphic novels with kindergartners because it is so heavy on picture books and emergent readers, but there's a lot of great emergent graphic novel series that are out there. If you're not familiar with Ryan Smith, he has two graphic novel series. One of them is called Band Camp, and the other one is PB&J. I had the privilege of having him in as an author visit a couple of years ago, and he is just phenomenal and so eager to like get out into schools and see what kids are like and ask them questions and talk to teachers and trying to incorporate that into his own work, which I really loved. Author visits can be really hit or miss, and he was one of the ones that when he came, I could just really tell that he was trying to gather up a lot of information to put directly back into his books. So that was really cool to see. I like supporting his work. So in the scene that you're seeing right here, PB&J are trying to get home, and then they're walking by this mysterious animal that is hidden in the hedge. And this would be a great way with students to talk about suspense and making predictions about what's to come and looking at the characters' facial expressions and thinking about what the tone of the story is and getting into vocabulary where you're talking about like spookiness and mystery and just kind of building up their vocabulary about how to talk about the mood of a story. Yes, we will definitely get into some more of the meatier ones. All right. Twins is another graphic novel that I think could potentially also be really good for maybe like your 6th and 7th graders. Definitely 6th grade would be great. This is the only graphic novel that Varian Johnson has done so far. Gosh, I hope he does more. If you're not familiar with Varian Johnson, he's the author of The Parker Inheritance, which won a Coretta Scott King Award a few years ago. And then he's also been on the Battle of the Books state list for several years. He is just phenomenal, and I really love his style, and he seems to really connect well to the mood of like what preteens are like. The premise of this story, there's these two twins that are very opposite ends of the personality spectrum, and there's one who's kind of always the leader, kind of always in charge, and then the other twin is more of like a shy, keeps to themselves, really doesn't try to disrupt the water too much. And one of them decides that they're going to run for student council president and just kind of assumes that her twin sister is going to back her campaign and help support her. And the other twin feels really lost in the shuffle of all of that and is ready to kind of take on more of a leadership role. And so at this point in the story, this is where you see the shyer sister kind of go behind her twin's back and signs up to become student council president and run against her as well. And this is one of those great turning points in the stories where you can have a conversation with students about like what has contributed to the sequence of events in the story, what has led this character to make this decision, what kind of predictions do you think are going to happen afterwards, what kind of conflict do you think is going to come from this twin sister kind of betraying her twin, so to say. It's one of those moments that you get into the story and you're like, oh, can't believe she did that. What's about to happen? There's about to be some drama that's going down, and there definitely is. So your kids would have a lot to dig into after that as well. That is a 3rd grade standard that this one can be kind of hard too, and I've seen it come up as a question on lots of EOG passages if you ever need to throw in the testing side of things. There's a lot of questions where kids are asked, like, what contributed to this moment happening in the story? What caused this to happen? And having visual support with that in an intense scene of a graphic novel can really help lots of kids access a part of the story like that. Okay, so we're going to switch formats a little bit and start talking about how to incorporate this into student creation and writer's workshop or starting a club in your media center, which Molly sent this book to me in the mail, and I just, oh my God, I immediately fell in love with it and devoured it. And starting a cartoonist club in my own library is something that's like big picture, would really love to have that going. I'm really fortunate that we have a 4th grade teacher that incorporates this as such a long unit in our curriculum as well. So I do feel like this is at least getting hit really hard in one of our grade levels, but man, this would be such a phenomenal text to use. Let Let me scroll down in the chat a little bit. Yeah. So this is Raina Telgemeier's newest book that she did in collaboration with Scott McCloud. And I love all of her stuff, but this book is just such a wonderful way for teachers, adults, parents, students to really see the validity in what a graphic novel can do for kids, because it takes these kind of children that don't really have a lot of peer friends yet, don't really have a place where they belong, and they start going into the library and finding that they have a lot of things in common with each other, and that they're interested in comic books and graphic novels, and they all have such different skill sets. One of them is more of a writer, one of them is more of an illustrator, one of them is more of a, I just want to tell a fun story and it be fun and exciting all the time. And their librarian kind of gets them to form a little club. And the beauty of this book is that it teaches you as a teacher how to teach graphic novels with students. If you feel like, I don't even read graphic novels myself, I don't even read comic books that much, this is something that feels so far out of my comfort zone, you read this book and it's lovely because you can crush it within like a day or two. And you'll just feel more confident about the vocabulary that you're using when you're teaching kids how to like write snippets and panels and, facial expressions and chat boxes. And it walks you through how the librarian is teaching the kids how to make their own graphic novels. So it's kind of like learning within learning. I'm just obsessed with this book. It's so great. So let me give you some previews of it. One of the very first things that she does, oh, and I should also preface this by saying, I would love to do this book as a book club with kids and like read it with them while they're learning how to make their own graphic novels, because it starts at the beginning of like how to get started and takes you all the way through the whole writing process. It's so beautifully done. This first scene that you see right here is like day one of their club, where the librarian is trying to teach them about how to come up with an interesting title or powerful, effective title. And then you also see a lot of kid struggle in that too, of like realistic things that children sometimes struggle with, where she gave them like 20 minutes to sketch out their thoughts. And a lot of kids get really hung up on like one illustrated picture having to be perfect and running out of time and not knowing what to do with that, or their story was just so all over the place in 20 minutes that it didn't really make sense, and you needed to kind of slow down and make it more of like a watermelon seed moment where you're focusing on just one thing. So there's a lot of great teaching within this book. This scene right here is where one of the kids, who I believe his father is a comic book publisher or writer or something like that. He's got a lot of background knowledge, and he gets to teach the kids about how to make zines and ash cans and mini comics one day. It shows you how to fold the paper, how to put the illustrations in appropriate places. It really is like a how-to guide for teaching how to write a graphic novel or comic book. The scene on the left is teaching about how to include thumbnails. And then on the right side, the librarian has a whole lesson with them one day about the different genres that you can see within graphic novels, because I think that we can often kind of make the stereotype of it just being superhero books, because that's how we thought about comics for such a long time. But the genre it's expanding and growing and evolving so quickly and so much that it's beautiful to have that kind of written out as well. This is a lesson where the kids got together and learned about how to draw different facial expressions to convey meaning and to make sure that their characters like were able to convey the emotion that they had planned out in their writing. Okay. I will also say that when I was a classroom teacher in the mid 2000s to 2010, 2017-ish, we had a big push for Lucy Calkins in curriculum in my district. And I am just Lucy Hater 101. And if you're not, that's fine. No hate to you at all. And there's been a lot of things that have come out about her in recent years and teaching college and all of that. But I will say, where she got a lot of things right and where teaching college got a lot of things right, there is a book that she has within one of her units that our fourth grade teacher does use, where you can teach kids how to write graphic novels. It's a part of the teaching college curriculum, and it has lots of really great guiding images about how to model anchor charts for kids. There's a lot of great lessons about how to teach them about specific vocabulary that comes with writing comic books and graphic novels. So it's a good one. I don't say that about a lot of Lucy things because I hated the script component of it and just felt like really boxed in when I was using that curriculum. But I went through that book and I do really like it. So that's my caveat there. On the right side of our screen here, we've got some do's and don'ts that are kind of helpful if you're thinking about implementing this into your writer's workshop curriculum. I won't read through that with you because I'm going to send you these slides at the very end, but some good tips and tricks if you're thinking about putting that in there. These are some images from my school. At the very end of the year, we have this beautiful writer celebration with our fourth graders where they kind of do a bit of a combo where they do a wax museum project and are in the gym, like giving presentations about their North Carolina person that they researched. But then laid out on the tables while their parents and teachers and peers are going through the gym, all of their graphic novels that they created in this writers unit are out for like a library walk. And you've got kids from all grade levels in our school that get to come down and sit and read them. There's teachers that get to come and sit down and look at their former students' work. Their parents and their siblings get to come. And they're just so good. Like, it's one of the highlights at the end of my year every year to go and see the things that kids create. And some of it, you can kind of see like in the bottom left-hand corner, some of these illustrations are just so legit and professional. And for a lot of kids where writing massive text and sentences and paragraphs can just feel so overwhelming for them, for our illustrators, for our kids that like, this is just a time for a lot of our kids to shine that may not necessarily have found that in previous writers workshop units. So that's one of my favorite things to share. Okay, hopefully all of that sounds pretty good to you. Now, the realistic part of that is that you're still going to probably get pushback on using this comfortably in your classroom, using this in your libraries. So here's some ways that I have found success in advocating and making sure that this is something that my kids have access to. Oh, I didn't mean to push that timer. Next. How to get that to go away. Okay, sorry. School Library Journal a few years back did a really great survey, middle, elementary, and high school, where they kind of surveyed teachers, parents, students on the effects of graphic novels within their schools. The graphs, I think, are really helpful for a visual, but there's also like a full article written out as well that you could use for advocating. One of the things that I find the most interesting about this, it might not be on this page, but at some point, elementary and middle are the two age groups where parents and teachers really hinder access to graphic novels for students. High school, not as much, and that might be because you're getting up into the age where if a teenager's picking up a book, we encourage any and all. I'm not really sure, but I did find it really fascinating that there's so much hindrance on graphic novels and elementary readers at such a critical developmental stage where really we just want them reading and we want them engaged, and any way that really we can really hold on to that like nugget of keeping them interested. Speaking as someone who went into middle school and really just kind of dropped off of a love of reading for quite some time until Sharon Draper came and visited my school and reignited my love of reading again. But not every kid's going to get that. And just letting them keep their engagement is such an important piece of that. I also, when I curate graphic novels, I realize that a lot of my kids may not be gravitating towards middle grade chapter books if they're spending more time on graphic novels. And so what I try to do is really be on the lookout for graphic novels that include complex human stories. I don't have a ton of graphic novels that feature like creatures and animals. Not to say that there's anything wrong with that, because there's not, and there's some great ones out there. But giving my kids an opportunity to see a realistic image of diverse peoples with diverse stories is so important to me. And so these are all graphic novels that I currently have in my collection, and many of them are award winners or great adaptations of classics of things. I want my kids reading and thinking about people. There's plenty of picture books that have lots of good animals in them. There's lots of great chapter books that have animals and things in them. But I think back to that 2015 We Need Diverse Books demographic that came out about how white children and animals are like the two highest things in publication. And to me, like, this is such an easy, low-hanging fruit opportunity of, if your kids are gravitating towards these books, look for things that are already going to give them access to empathetic stories and diverse perspectives. Like, we know the interest is there. We know the engagement is there. Snag them in with a really good emotional story or just a perspective that they may not get every day. Okay, so for my middle school people, these next 2 pages are all adaptations of things that would be really, really great to have in your collections. I remember I read Tuck Everlasting in 6th grade. I can't wait to read the graphic novel adaptation of that one. Garvey's Choice is a great one. Anne of West Philly, The Giver. I was talking to a teacher this morning who has a son in 4th grade who just for whatever reason saw the trailer for the Giver movie, and she said that they read the graphic novel together first as a way to give him context and images of what was happening in the story, because 4th grade is kind of a low age range to read The Giver. Like, that's a really in-depth book. And then she said that by the time that they switched over from the graphic novel and read the chapter book together, that he was able to grapple with so much more of the mature content in that book because he had the background knowledge of those images in the graphic novel already, which I think is just phenomenal. Kelly Yang announced not too long ago that Front Desk is getting a graphic novel adaptation. I'm very excited about that. I've got a lot of Kelly Yang lovers in my library. Joel Parker Rhodes' Ghost Boys just got adapted. One Crazy Summer is a great one. Shannon Hell's Princess Academy. Philip Pullman's Golden Compass. Lemonade War. Those are all really, really great novels to have in your collection. And there's a much wider range of middle school texts that would be great for those older audiences too. I'm just giving you the caveat that, like, not expertise, but my passion is for elementary. So that's really where I'm looking at the most. But there are a lot of other adaptations for older kids out there as well. The newsletter that you see on the left side of the screen right here is just like a Canva newsletter that I made for a 3rd grade teacher a couple of years ago, because she had some parents that were sending her emails and saying, don't let my kid come home with any more graphic novels from the library. I want them reading a real book. And thankfully, she came to me and said, I'm stressed. What do I do about this? I don't want to limit what my kids are reading. And so I made that for her. And it takes you through some podcasts that you can share with parents, some research articles. Yeah, there's a research article right there. Also, some social media posts about the damage of taking away novels from children and what that does for their engagement and interest, and just kind of putting the emotion into it. A really great, I have this hanging in my library. It's a poster from Capstone about how graphic novels are real books, and there's data and science to back that up. So really anything that we can get out there that's professional like that, I think, backs up our argument. Now, the compromise to that is I said that I'm a both and educator. So I have a daughter in first grade. She is obsessed with graphic novels. I am not at all interested in hindering that interest with her. Our compromise to making sure that that's not the only thing that she's reading so that she's getting access to a wide variety of text is she does graphic novels as like her personal read to herself. And then our nightly reading routine is she reads a chapter or two from a continuous text novel to me. And so because she's the age group that she is, and just me not having a lot of knowledge about chapter books that I could recommend to teachers and parents that are kind of that sweet spot in between them moving out of like emergent readers. I don't know if you've kind of noticed, but it seems like there's such a huge jump between the books that kids in like K1 are reading, and then all of a sudden it seems like they're supposed to be reading a 300 to 400 page book, and that's just not realistic. And so I've really been on the hunt to try and find and curate chapter books that merge both of those things together. They're highly illustrated. They include a lot of picture support, but then you're still giving kids the opportunity to access lots and lots of continuous text. So down here on the left-hand side of the screen, when you get the slides, if you click on this right here, it is a live working document that I'm constantly updating, and I also divide it by the type of illustration that's in here. So the way that I've organized it is there's books that have black and white illustration solely, books that have some color in the illustration, and then books that have full color illustration. Because sometimes your kids that are only reading graphic novels, you hand them a book that's in black and white and they open it up and they're like, I don't want that. So one of the things that I'm really excited to see in a lot of these recent publications is you do have these beautiful chapter books that are being published now that have gorgeous full color illustrations that are really in that range of like first to third, fourth. And this does not mean that your older readers can't read this as well, because I'm not someone that's like, you know, you got to, when they're this age, you got to cut off the book that they're reading. Like, that's not the mentality that we want to have. We have a lot of English language learners that are coming in with limited proficiency in reading, and this is a perfect way to kind of edge them along in reading levels and giving them lots of access to illustrations, but still getting practice with continuous text as well. So, like I said, this is a live document that I'm always adding new things that I find into, just kind of trying to keep a good running thing that I can share out with people. So you will have a link to this document. You're welcome to make a copy of it or share it out. I do have my name listed in the top there so that there's credit if you decide to spread it widely. I would just appreciate the name being in there. All right, my last page for you are some things that are not out yet, but if you're someone that likes to get excited about things that are coming up, or thinking about things to add to your wish list, or things that maybe are not in your budget this year, because I've pretty much spent all of my budget and I'm out of money and I got to wait until September to get more. These are some things that are coming out in the fall or in the summer or in early winter that I'm really excited about. Kwame Alexander is going to have one of his first like soul graphic novel books that he's going to write that's coming out soon. Mexikid sequel is going to come out in the fall. I'm really excited about that. That was a huge Pure Belpre and Newbery winner a couple of years ago. The sequel to the book Candy Makers, which was on our Battle of the Books list for several years, that's going to come out in graphic novel format. Super excited about that. There's lots of biographies that are getting published in graphic novel format now. The Princess Academy is going to get adapted into graphic novel. So there's lots of goodies to come. Just keep your eye out for things like that. I try to subscribe to publishers and get recommendations in my email, because it's hard to track everything that's coming out. So just having get sent straight to your email is another nice way to stay informed, or follow really good accounts on social media that are constantly recommending things like this too. I mean, you can even just go into the search bar of Instagram and search middle grade graphic novels, and you'll get a plethora of suggestions. I get 70 to 80% of the books that I curate from book influencers that are just really good and find really great things to share. So we're really lucky to have that in our current digital age. If you're interested in taking a copy of these slides, the link, that's the bit.ly link in the bottom right-hand corner, is listed right down there at the bottom. Feel free to snag that. If you decide to share it, if you'll please just credit me somewhere in that, I would appreciate it. But I'm very much so one of those educators that if we've got something good and you want to share it out, go for it. I hope that this was helpful, beneficial. You've got some good takeaways to go with you today, and I really enjoyed getting to share one of my favorite parts of my job with you today.
Thank you, Rebecca. It was awesome. As usual, I think most people are probably as blown away as I was the first time I got to hear you talk about this and all of the instructional ways that you can do this and addressing so many different things, that are more than just, we just want them to read anything. I think that's kind of the message that some people get. So this is really awesome, and you're getting a lot of love in the chat as well. I'm gonna stop recording, so if anybody else has any questions, you can ask them without being on the recording.